There's a great deal of dangers to contend with in Lookout Side. The visitor's influence has led to an abundance of dangerous creatures and monsters lurking around every corner. The motivations of these aberrations significantly varies. While a great deal of these mutants were once human and maintained some of that individuality, others become entirely animalistic and primitive, hunting and seeking to do harm to our character Sam for the pleasure of it. What I have found quite interesting through my various playthroughs of the game is the motivation behind a lot of these creatures. It seems as though Sam, as the main character, is the focus of a lot of these fixations. There's differing reasons why this is the case, but Sam is at the center of it all. So the question I want to answer is why? What makes Sam so special? Why are all of these various things trying to do him harm? In order to break this down, I've separated some of the more notable encounters into 3 different categories. First off, we have our Territorial Hunters. These guys seem to be unspecific regarding who they target. However, they always seem to have a reason to attack. Either you've entered into their environment, or you've touched or stolen something that you shouldn't have. Our second category is the Fixated Stalkers. These creatures seem focused in their obsession. Their motivation seems to be tied to Sam as an entity, but not Sam himself, the individual. For instance, Philippe down in the fungal labyrinth knows that you are an intruder, and that's where his fixation comes from. He doesn't know that you're Sam, the guy from the 3rd floor. Our third category is Sam-specific stalkers. This group know who Sam is. He is the reason that they either obsess, fixate, or stalk him. The most obvious example is our shutterbug friend, Lyle. Each one of these categories operates uniquely, however, they're united under the fact that they all wish to possess, control, or otherwise harm our main character Sam. So let's break down each one of these and see what we can figure out. First of all, our Territorial Hunters. This category includes creatures such as the taxidermy beast, the hellcar, the boiler beast, the sewer beast, the rat king, and even our friends Lee and Helen to a certain extent. For some of these beings, stalking, fighting, and killing whomever they can is just within their nature. They see it as a challenge, much like the Rat King looking for a successor, or Lee just looking for a worthy opponent. On the topic of Lee, I feel as though initially she was a Territorial Hunter. However, after being defeated by Sam, her motivation pivots to being more closely related to the Sam-specific stalkers. I think Helen falls into this boat as well, as you can tell from her personality that it's just within her nature to be a stalker killer. Before her transformation, Helen was a simple gardener. I'm not sure how that equated to being Jason Voorhees once she transformed, but that is what her inner nature has revealed. The other variety of hunters we see in the game are more fixated on specific objects or areas. A good example is the suture wire from the taxidermy apartment. This guy stalks you around the apartment as you're going into different rooms, but it's only upon entering his stitched together dimension by unlocking the door and going into the otherworld lounge room that he will actually become hostile. Up until that point, you can wander around, kill his creations, even steal the patchwork hat, and he won't aggro to you. It's only upon unlocking that door that'll bring him to life. This guy will guard the exit back to the hallway, but he won't specifically chase you. He'll just hover around near the doorway. Unlike the hellcar, When you run into the Hellcar, he's dormant, but he's sitting in front of a can of gasoline and the flamethrower. If you pick up the flamethrower, he comes to life and he'll chase you. Since the Hellcar is sitting directly in front of you, not many people probably realize that this guy will never stop chasing you, and he can follow you throughout the entire level. He doesn't go through level transitions, but you'll be surprised how fast and how far he can get. Overall, entities that operate in this hunter category operate on instinct. Their obsession is based on an area, a location, sometimes a possession, or an objective, which they drive towards incessantly. If Sam happens to interact with any of those obsessions, then he becomes the target of their wrath. These creatures tend to be fairly simple and their motivations are quite obvious, but when we start looking at the next category, things become a little murkier. Let's move on to the Fixated Stalkers. This category has more layers. These guys are more sophisticated and have some really unique motivations. Philippe, for instance, down in the fungus labyrinth. This guy initially comes across as quite territorial in terms of his motivation. You're intruding upon his mistress's territory, he's going to try to kill you, sure. But the way he goes about it ends up putting him in this category. Much like the rest of his brethren in the fungus labyrinth, Philippe could simply attack you on sight, but he doesn't. His focus, his objective is deception. But why? Even when you're killing his kin, he won't stop you. In fact, he'll assist you up until the point that you threaten his mistress. Then he will turn on you. If you attempt to leave the fungus labyrinth early, Philippe will do everything in his power to turn you back around, to keep the deception going. And if you're really not taking to it, then he'll fight you, but he'll interrogate you while he's trying to kill you. And his main objective in this interrogation is to find out why his deception didn't work. You could argue that the whole shtick of the fungal labyrinth is deception. Hence the spores and the reason that the spore mother herself is shrouded in an illusion. But even the spore mother isn't as invested in the illusion, the deception, as Philippe. This comes across to me like Philippe's motivation isn't successfully defending his mistress or the fungal labyrinth itself. His true goal is to prove that he can pull off the perfect cover, the ultimate deception, and entrap you at the very last moment. Two other creatures that I feel fall into this category can be found in the otherworldly gore apartment that is attached to Edwin the Stargazer's telescope apartment. I'm referring to Confusion and Stretchface. Both of these creatures know what Sam is to a certain extent. They don't know who he is, but they've seen his visage in whatever dimension they lie in. For whatever reason, Edwin's power seems to have created this place, this alternate dimension version of Sam's apartment. Confusion, Stretchface, and Spine mentioned that Edwin recreated them, remade them into the image they currently are. But remade them for what purpose? Both Confusion and Stretchface seem to harbor some kind of resentment for Sam. For some reason, Confusion seems to experience Sam's anxieties to an extreme degree. He occupies what would be Sam's bedroom in the Otherworld apartment, and for some reason can see the after image of Sam while he's in his own bedroom. Confusion seems to have a myriad of motivations for why he would attack Sam. Firstly, the fears and anxieties that he experiences seem to originate from Sam. Perhaps killing you would cease them altogether. Secondly, he does appear jealous that even though these anxieties are yours and he is experiencing them, you don't seem to be crippled or terrorized by them like he is. His last motivation is an exit strategy. He has been terrorized by his existence long enough. He wants Sam to kill him and end his suffering. Stretchface is slightly more confusing, funnily enough, even though his compatriot is named Confusion. Stretchface inhabits the bathroom of the otherworldly apartment, and his obsession is more based on the fact that he has been trapped here. Trapped in the bathroom, observing Sam's otherworldly version as he goes around doing mundane chores like showering or brushing his teeth. I think that Stretchface is supposed to represent Sam's concept of control, or at least his struggle to maintain it. For those experiencing a lack of self-control or some kind of independence over their own life, it is often recommended that they maintain some kind of daily routine. Often this involves the self-care that would occur in the bathroom. For somebody like Sam, who's recently lost their job and doesn't really have a purpose in their life, then these little rituals may have been implemented for quite some time in order for him to feel like he still has some grip over the direction his life is taking. Unfortunately for Stretchface, his existence is a more conflated, exaggerated version of this balance. Not only has he been robbed of his ability to leave this place, time dilation also takes place here. Stretchface mentions that for every 1 minute that passes in our dimension, 23 minutes pass here. He has been in this bathroom for years, unable to leave, having no control over his fate. The other unfortunate aspect of his existence and his namesake is the fact that his head can randomly expand. It seems as though Stretchface has little influence over whether this happens or not, although he does express that he very much wishes that it wouldn't happen. When you battle Stretchface, he mentions that he is in a struggle to control the expansion of his head, but once it has expanded, he decides perhaps maybe you would enjoy that fate as well. This interaction helps to demonstrate the jealousy that Stretchface also feels towards Sam, as in this moment he is trying to exert his control over Sam that he has always been denied himself. These two occupy a really odd space in this categorization I've put together. Although I think that both Confusion and Stretchface recognize that Sam is not the origin of their torment. Edwin, the Stargazer, is. However, Sam's presence in their dimension is like a taunt, a constant reminder that they are trapped where they are, that they're experiencing what they're experiencing, and thus he becomes the focus of their resentment. Before we move on to the next category, the Sam-specific stalkers, I should mention the one outlier that sits outside of all these categories, the Stargazer, Edwin. The visitor's influence on Edwin's transformation seems to have an emphasis on his personality or his nature as an observer. Edwin was once an astronomer, much like Asta and Sybil. He likely gazed at the visitor through the telescope in his bedroom. This interaction turned Edwin into some kind of a telescope beast, that much is obvious. What is less clear is why his observation turned towards Sam and his apartment after that fact, but it is clear that it did. How else could Edwin have recreated this otherworldly version of the exact layout of Sam's apartment and created these creatures that reflect part of Sam's psyche? Edwin is odd, because when you enter his apartment, he has the aspects of the Territorial Hunters. He will follow you from room to room, seemingly because you entered his domain. However, he did create Another entire dimension seemingly focused specifically on Sam, but Sam never mentions him, as if he never knew he was being observed. This leads me to believe that Edwin, before he was transformed, had some way to observe Sam while he was in his apartment. After all, he knows the exact layout of Sam's apartment, he knows his routines, he knows enough about Sam to transfer a lot of those aspects of Sam's psychology to these creations he has made. The problem with Edwin is that we just don't learn enough about him. We can make a lot of inferences, but we don't have any solid facts. We can only see the outcome, twisted observations made sickening reality. When it comes to the Fixated Stalkers, their nature of malevolence has been greatly influenced by the existence of Sam. Although completely unintentional, Sam's actions have either interacted with or are the direct cause of their fixations. In regards to Stretchface and Confusion, Sam is inadvertently the origin of their torment. Their motivation for harming Sam could be considered retribution. Philippe, on the other hand, sees Sam as a blank canvas in which to paint his perfect deception. Actually, killing Sam is a secondary goal to achieving his masterpiece. Moving on now to the Sam-specific stalkers, our last category. The entities in this category are very unique. Each one has a very specific goal in mind for Sam, and they differ quite a bit. The most obvious, and perhaps even the easiest to understand, is Lyle. Lyle, the shutterbug down on floor 2, is another resident of the apartment complex. Lyle used to work at the convenience store with Sam, and in that time gained a fascination, an infatuation for Sam. Although Lyle has transformed into the shutterbug, he is somewhat ashamed of his transformation and won't be actively hostile towards Sam. However, if Sam shows any hostility towards him, then Lyle is not above using his newfound powers to turn Sam into a photograph. Lyle's ultimate desire is to possess Sam, to have him as a romantic partner, for instance. However, his fascination is incredibly unhealthy, so if it looks like that outcome isn't going to occur, he will turn Sam into a possession, a much more obvious metaphor for having ownership over Sam. Another resident of the apartment complex who struggles to understand boundaries is our friend the Masked Shadow. This little guy shares quite a few comparisons with Lyle. He operates in much the same way, initially appearing quite kind and even generous. However, soon into your relationship with this strange shadow creature, he will overstep his boundaries and even threaten to kill you, although perhaps unintentionally. This occurs when the shadow sneaks into Sam's bedroom when he is sleeping. The masked shadow will open up his cloak and beckon Sam inside. For what purpose? We're really not sure, but the outcome is quite clear. Sam dies horribly. It appears the motivation behind this is some sort of twisted affection. However, the masked shadow is not interested, or maybe doesn't care, about the outcome for Sam. He is only invested in what he gets out of this exchange. Unlike Lyle, however, the masked shadow does have the opportunity and the ability to change. If Sam reprimands the masked shadow and resets the boundaries of their relationship, then the masked shadow can continue to inhabit Sam's apartment and will no longer be a threat to his life. It appears that the interactions with the masked shadow seem to emulate the structure of a newly founded dating relationship. Our first interaction is the meeting. Some kindness is exchanged, perhaps a nice gesture which stokes interest in the shadow. The second interaction is simply spending time together, becoming more comfortable in each other's presence. The third interaction includes gift giving, in this instance quite a hefty amount of money from the shadow. The fourth interaction is where the masked shadow oversteps. He assumes that, considering the success of the previous steps, that it is guaranteed Sam is ready for his version of intimacy. Thankfully, Sam has the ability to offer him a reality check and shuffle him back into the friend zone. The next Sam-obsessed stalker is the landlord, Mr. Henderson. This guy isn't particularly fixated on Sam when he transforms. He's more interested in the nightmares that haunt him from war. But once he does transform, he tends to focus on Sam's late rent. That's a large part of his motivation. What I find confusing about Mr. Henderson, especially while he is in the midst of his transformation, is that each level of the landlord's apartment, Sam fulfills his obligation and pays his rent that's overdue. And yet, Mr. Henderson continues to transform stage by stage closer to the trench digger, his ultimate form. And once he confronts Sam as the trench digger, he says, "Time to move out," and then tries to blow your face off with his cannon thing. Like, what? Dude, I just paid all of my rent. Like, why are you so pissed off? Evidently, Mr. Henderson's fixation is his memories of war. For whatever reason, he just seems to hate Sam, and that doesn't seem to be something that was supernatural. I just think Mr. Henderson hated your dumb ass, and being mutated was just a good excuse to kill you. The next stalker on our list is quite special. She separates herself from the fellow members of the Gore apartment over in Edwin's Stargazer Labyrinth due to the genuine care and affection that she shares for Sam. I'm referring to the creature Spine. On first interaction with Spine, it might just seem that she is insane. For some reason, she wants to remake you and will shred you in combat. She's very dangerous. Much like Confusion and Stretchface, she can see Sam's afterimage in this dimension and often tries to get close to him, spending time in bed with him, sometimes trying to touch him, and genuinely trying to be close. Spine's dialogue portrays a kind of care that you just don't see with Stretchface or Confusion. They seem annoyed, resentful, maybe even hateful of Sam, whereas Spine seems to genuinely care about your well-being. She has an interesting way of showing this, intending to remake you in what seems like the most painful way possible. Spine is also the only creature in this dimension that will actually stop combat with Sam. If you get her down below 50 points of HP, she'll stop the fight and say, "Actually, you're not ready to accept this reality. We don't have to do this right now. I can wait until you're comfortable." At this point, you can kind of have like a pseudo friendship with Spine. When she touches you in her otherworldly dimension, you can kind of feel it in your apartment, and you can say, "Oh, hey Spine. Oh, hello Spine, how are you doing?" This is pretty confusing from the outset, so here's my interpretation of what Spine is and what she represents. Much like Confusion and Stretchface, I think that Spine represents a key part of Sam's psyche, specifically his concept of loneliness. Just like the other residents of this dimension, Spine has been observing Sam, and what she's noted more than anything is how lonely he is. I think this is why she spends time touching you. She sleeps in your bed with you. She mentions, I'm like your guardian angel. But she's not physically protecting you for anything. So what is she sheltering you from? I think it is crippling loneliness. In the unique end cutscene where you let Spine remake you, what she does is rips you open and crawls inside of you, merging with Sam and his internal organs, shuffling them out of the way so that she can fit in, connecting your nerve endings and your very being. I believe what Spine is doing here is she is amalgamating herself with Sam. She is combining the two entities into one. This fact is illustrated quite well by one of the quotes that Spine says while she is tearing you to pieces. This is going to be scary and painful. Change always is. But in the end, you'll see it's for the best. We will never be alone again. Just like Stretchface and Confusion, Spine experiences Sam's crippling loneliness herself, probably 1,000-fold, which is why she's come to this incredibly radical solution. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the various hunters, stalkers, and other obsessed entities that exist in the game with a focus on Sam. To summarize a lot of waffling over the last 30 minutes, hunters wish to kill Sam because it is their nature, or he has interacted with their territory or obsession. Their motivation is essentially natural. Sam is in the wrong place at the wrong time. For our fixated stalkers, Philippe wishes to deceive Sam. Confusion wishes to be freed by Sam. Stretchface seeks to control Sam. Each one still wants to harm Sam, but that seems secondary to their main motivation. As for our Sam-specific stalkers, Lyle wishes to possess Sam as if he were a prize or a trophy. The masked shadow intends to objectify Sam as if he were a conquest. Spine hopes to save Sam and in turn emancipate herself from her own suffering. And Mr. Henderson just hates your ass. I don't know why, because you're a bum. This is all well and good, but we still haven't scratched on the main question at the heart of this video. Why is this all occurring to Sam? Well, I think there's two clear schools of thought. One, and the most obvious, perhaps the most critical, Sam is the main character of the game. Everything happens to Sam because he's the player character and things have to happen to the player character. Surprise! That is probably the more likely outcome, but it's really shit. So we're gonna go in a slightly crazier route and go down another rabbit hole. This second theory revolves around the original and arguably most powerful Stalker of Sam, your neighbor Sybil. Throughout the game, Sybil is a constant. She is the neighbor's eye staring through various cracks in your walls, in your apartment, in your lounge room, and in your bedroom. She allows you to save the game. She speaks to you frequently, sometimes giving some observations about what is happening or what her thoughts are on the situation. She is the first character you speak to, initially encouraging you to look outside, but soon after warning you of the dangers of doing just that. In a lot of ways, you could say that Sybil is the main motivation for the game occurring. Otherwise, Sam probably would have woken up, looked outside, died. Sybil is the one that tells Sam about the 15-day time limit. She's the one that informs him that something cosmic and powerful is outside. She basically sets the whole game in motion. So what's that got to do with everything trying to kill Sam or being obsessed with him? Well, Chronologically, in the events of the game, Sybil was the very first person to observe the visitor. She was the original leader of the astronomers and the first person to notice the entity in the outer cosmos. This likely means that Sybil was the first person to establish a psychic link with the visitor, likely the strongest psychic link that we see in the game. The visitor appears to be searching through Earth's inhabitants to find, specifically, Sybil. This is illustrated in the ending where you wait out the 15 days. The visitor does leave on its own, as Sybil predicted, but only after abducting Sybil from the apartment next door. So if Sybil is the focus of the visitor's fixation and received a supercharged dose of visitor psychic juice, what exactly are her powers? What is her influence? Well, we know from context clues that Sybil originally lived in an apartment on floor 1. It's the apartment that has all the overgrown, red, gunky flesh stuff everywhere. It has some shotgun shells and grenades in there when you bust in. This fleshy gunk that we find strewn throughout the entire apartment complex may be part of Sybil's form. When she got a superdose of the visitor's influence, her form disintegrated or expanded or completely went out of control. It's hard to tell, but we know from Sam's ending with his direct interaction with the visitor that he grew to the size of a planet. If this is the case, that means that Sybil's physical form is riddled throughout the entire apartment complex. Her mind appears fractured, but also stable and isolated in the apartment next door to Sam. Despite the immense power that she has been gifted with this new form, her conscious experience is only focused on two little holes that stare directly into Sam's apartment, directly at Sam, focusing on him and him alone. We know from other examples in the game that the psychic link with the visitor gives the human host powers that they are unaware of, often having dangerous and unintended consequences. I believe one of these consequences is in fact the shadow enemies that spawn throughout the apartment complex. In the past, I theorized that Sam was responsible for the shadows, as his fear of the outside and slowly going further and further away from home was spawning these creatures. However, recently a much more compelling argument was brought to my attention. The Hellsword weapon that is located in the car park in the basement is found within a large pool of the pink, fleshy mess that is likely Sybil's body. The Hellsword is made out of this material and specifically deals corruption damage. This is the only weapon in the game that deals corruption damage, and funnily enough, corruption damage is the only thing that is incredibly effective against the shadows. Therefore, I don't think it's Sam's anxiety that is creating these shadows, but Sybil's anxiety about Sam being away from the apartment, getting further and further away from the safety net that she can provide. Sybil's power is so immense that these shadow creatures that she has unknowingly spawned can only be defeated effectively by another creation of Sybil's that perhaps she also unknowingly created, the Hellsword. Two powers born from the same source, cancelling each other out. To summarize, I believe that Sybil's fixation on Sam and her immense power is what drives the fixation for all of these other cast of characters to focus on Sam. Sybil's influence is likely so strong that unknowingly and maybe even subconsciously, she has imprinted some kind of super attraction onto Sam. This would explain why Sam, the below average low achiever with no special traits, abilities, or appearance, is somehow able to garner the ire, admiration, resentment, hatred, love, obsession, and fixation of literally everyone that he meets. Sam is the superstar of the apocalypse, propped up by his manager and biggest fangirl, Sybil. So, what are your thoughts about this ridiculously crazy and long-ass ramble of mine? Just some very obscure thoughts stitched together for your enjoyment. I'm interested to see if you have any comparative theories. What do you think is going on with Sam? What's up with Edwin and the otherworldly apartment? What's happening there? I don't know. This is my interpretation. I'd like to hear yours. By the way, before I wrap up, if you're wondering where the hard mode stuff is, the hard mode beta has about a third of the game complete so far. There's some pretty cool stuff in there, but not really enough to talk about in a video just yet. Let's give Frankie some time to finish cooking, and then I'll do a whole hard mode thing, and it'll be really cool, and I'll be really annoyed about it because it is pretty damn hard, but that is coming. At the moment, we're all in a bit of a cooling off period. It's the beginning of the month. Likely we'll get hard mode in the next couple of weeks. Should be very cool. Looking forward to Look Outside Update 2.0. Keep going, Francis. You're killing it. Alright, until next time.
Cheese man, cheese man.
Who keeps saying cheese man?
Cheese man, cheese man.